Germany and Japan were part of the Axis powers during the Second World War. The Axis powers were blamed for the war. After the terrible war and defeat, the Axis powers, especially Germany and Japan, internalized this sense of guilt for the war. Atonement included withdrawing from the UN Security Council, the most powerful decision-making body in the post-war world, giving up their claim to be a global power, reducing their armies to very small levels, explicitly rejecting war as a means of expansion, enshrining pacifism in their constitutions, and, instead, focusing their energies on becoming economic powerhouses. After the Second World War, Japan adopted a pacifist constitution in 1947 to establish a peaceful international order, which in Article 9 rejected war as a sovereign right and prohibited the maintenance of military forces. Sincerely longing for an international peace based on justice and order, the Japanese people forever rejected war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as a means of settling international disputes. The world is in a time of historical transformation. From Eastern Europe to the Americas, from the Middle East to the Pacific, quiet winds are turning into storms. Especially Japan has recently been taking steps that will make its sheltered identity in the Pacific a thing of the past. During the global crisis, which has been described as the biggest test since the Second World War, Japan is sharpening its way to increase its power with unique programs. Japan is on high alert. Growing threats in the Asia-Pacific are prompting Tokyo to make the most extensive defense investments in its history. North Korea's constant missile tests, China's aggressive expansionist policy over Taiwan, and Russia's persistent pursuit of dominance over the southern Kuril Islands have turned Japan into a siege ring. In particular, the Kuril Islands dispute, which has been going on since the Second World War, has kept tensions between Japan and Moscow alive. All these developments are pushing the Tokyo administration to radically transform its defense doctrine. The Japan Self-Defense Forces is rapidly expanding its military capacity with missile systems, destroyer hardware, submarine fleets, and high-tech air power. With a 200,000-strong land force, 1443 aircraft, 521 tanks, and 859 naval elements, Japan is struggling to maintain regional balance. The rise of the dragon, the awakening of Japan, is the second alert for Russia and China. The Beijing regime's military show of force in the South China Sea, North Korea's expansion of its nuclear and missile inventory, Japan's conflict with Russia in the aftermath of the Ukraine crisis, and Donald Trump's return to the White House are pushing Japan to shed its post-war inhibitions and adopt a more proactive defense role in the Asia-Pacific. While all these factors have played a role, the process in Japan started years ago. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe played an important role. He raised the possibility of the country hosting US nuclear weapons facilities on Japanese soil, increased defense spending, and called for an assertive foreign and security policy. Under Abe, Japan passed a law allowing the Japan Self-Defense Forces to participate in overseas combat missions. Essentially, this law allowed Japan's armed forces to defend allies like the United States, even if Japan itself was not under attack. After the devastation of the war, Japan's constitution had previously limited Japan's forces to self-defense within its borders. Fast forward to today, and the dragon is beginning to wake up. In December 2024, Japan approved a 9.4% increase in defense spending for fiscal year 2025. This marked another record high for Japan's national defense budget for the 11th consecutive year. Japan, which historically spends less than 1% of its GDP on defense, has also pledged to increase this to 2% of its GDP by 2027. This increase in Japan's defense spending was part of its Defense Enhancement Program, which envisages defense spending of $273 billion over the 5-year period to fiscal 2027. Japan was also forging alliances with China's rivals. The Tokyo government developed and promoted military ties with many countries in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. Japan and the United States, along with Quad members Australia and India, have strengthened security cooperation through high-level dialogues, joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, and mutual access to each other's military facilities. In December 2022, Japan announced a joint program with Italy and the United Kingdom to develop a new sixth-generation fighter jet. The work was called the Global Combat Air Program. Of course, these efforts were not enough for Tokyo. This is why the Japan Self-Defense Forces have turned to hypersonics. Currently, Japan is developing two hypersonic weapon concepts: the hypersonic cruise missile and the hyperspeed gliding missile, as well as long-range missiles, are some of the areas of Japan's military endeavours. Last month, Japan's Ministry of Defence announced that it had successfully conducted flight tests for its island defence hypersonic gliding vehicle. 4 test launches were conducted at a facility in California. One was launched in August 2024, 2 in November 2024, and 1 in January 2025. Tokyo has also advanced itself to incredible levels in electronic warfare. Japan's new 10 kBALV class high-powered laser electronic warfare vehicle has recently entered service to counter air and missile threats, including enemy drones and low-altitude missile systems. As we have seen, both Japan and Germany have recently overstepped their boundaries. Both countries are major economic powerhouses and technology leaders with huge untapped industrial potential. Both have a strong ultra-nationalist and militarist history. In recent years, they have invested in new military equipment, increased defence spending, and removed constitutional barriers to expanding defence spending or deploying troops to foreign conflicts. So both Tokyo and Berlin are leaving behind their post-World War II timidity. There are signs that both countries may rethink their nuclear doctrines in the coming years if circumstances warrant. Their joint effort to expand their armed forces and develop a military-industrial complex could have far-reaching consequences for the existing world order. Both Germany and Japan were sleeping giants that had adopted pacifist constitutions and self-imposed limits on their ambitions for power. But the war in Europe, China's muscle flexing, and Donald Trump's unpredictability are forcing them to abandon their timidity and adopt a proactive security policy. So the balance is completely shifting. Japan and Germany are now on the verge of reaching a capability that could even intimidate Russia and China. Germany and Japan have the economic power, industrial infrastructure, and technological capability to significantly increase their defence spending and develop an indigenous military-industrial complex within a few years. The awakening of both countries could radically change the global order. But what are Russia and China doing about it? What is the state of play in the Far Eastern Alliance, while Germany and Japan are upgrading their military technology? After a video call with Russian President Vladimir Putin on February 24th, Chinese President Xi Jinping described the two countries as true friends who have overcome difficulties together. Xi Jinping emphasized that both history and present-day relations show a strong commitment to each other. The Kremlin issued a statement supporting this narrative and emphasizing the point that together they serve as a stabilizing force. This was the second meeting between the two leaders in just over a month. In addition, there are 120 United States military bases on Japanese soil, housing 57,000 United States troops, 70% of them in Okinawa. The reason for the presence of these troops on Japanese soil is quite clear. There is a growing threat from China and North Korea in the region. China is thought to possess 400 to 500 nuclear warheads. This number is estimated to increase to 1,500 by 2035. This is a very abundant and dangerous arsenal that is of concern to the nuclear-free world. China is diversifying its missile arsenal, including long-range missiles with which it can directly attack the United States. China has also developed medium-range missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads to Japan, the Philippines, Guam, and other countries. Since February, both Russia and China have been conducting surveillance near Japan's southwestern islands. During this time period, the Russian surveillance ship Karelia came as close as 12 miles to Japan's coast. In response, Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force followed the vessel with a destroyer escort, fleet oiler, and patrol aircraft. At the same time, a Chinese surveillance vehicle passed through the Miyako Strait. It is not unusual for Chinese military vehicles to use this route. On February 11th, a Chinese drone flew through the airspace between Yonaguni Island and Taiwan before entering the Philippine Sea, prompting the Japan Air Self-Defense Force to scramble fighter jets. Against this backdrop of risk, Japan's and Germany's efforts to upgrade their military and technological capabilities are crucial. There is talk that Russia's next target will be Europe, and China's next move will be against Japan after Taiwan. At the same time, the Russian threat to Japan has not gone away. We all know the Kuril Islands issue very well by now. Russia has been experiencing tensions with Japan over a territorial dispute. The Moscow regime will be much more supportive of China in order to gain more advantages in the Indo-Pacifics, to be the fully dominant party in the Kuril Islands. The Chinese side will support Russia, especially in terms of financing, in order to use it as leverage against the EU. The military and technological innovation of Germany and Japan against the Far Eastern Alliance is an example for the countries that support the EU and the NATO alliance in the Pacific to stop Russia and China. Established in 2019 as America's newest military service, the United States Space Force is expanding its presence in the Indo-Pacific region with the establishment of a component in South Korea in 2022. Elements in Japan and South Korea are affiliated with United States Space Force's Indo-Pacific. In the United States, Japan Cooperative Space Effort, a United States Space Domain Awareness sensor on a Japanese satellite launched earlier this month, marked a milestone in the United States-Japan space effort to provide the ability to track objects in space and predict potential threats. The United States, Japan, and South Korea are stepping up trilateral cooperation to address the challenges posed by North Korea's weapons development program. They have fully deployed a real-time information sharing system for missiles launched by Pyongyang in December 2023. Miller emphasized the importance of investing in missile warning mechanisms and building greater space surveillance and awareness capabilities to warn of debris that could be caused by irresponsible actions by countries like Russia. According to the United States Space Command, Moscow conducted an anti-satellite missile test in 2021 to destroy one of its abandoned satellites in orbit. This created large and long-lived space debris that could put other satellites and space missions at risk. Anti-satellite tests are conducted to develop weapon systems aimed at denying adversaries the ability to use space capabilities, such as destroying satellites vital to national security. Miller also addressed China's anti-satellite weapons demonstration and North Korea's firing of ballistic missiles, some of which have flown over Japan. Miller said that in recent decades, the threat landscape has been constantly changing and evolving, especially in the Indo-Pacific. What I see in the future, as much as we hope for evidence of stability and security around the world, the reality is that there is a threat of advancement in the People's Republic of China that we are concerned about. There is a current threat that we see on our North Atlantic Treaty Organization border with the Russian Federation in Ukraine. Miller said that part of the work of the new Japan component of the United States Space Force is to ensure that the two countries are ready for any potential crisis by deepening their partnership through training and exercises. He said Japan is improving its space awareness, missile warning, and tracking capabilities, and there are opportunities for partnership and training at the tactical level. Miller also emphasized the importance of multilateral partnerships and working with the commercial sector, noting how private companies are helping the United States Space Force in areas such as space domain awareness and launch capabilities. So Japan is expanding its military cooperation with its only ally, the United States. Japan is making an extraordinary investment to strengthen its defense system. A spending target of $302 billion has been set for the 2023 to 2027 period. We witnessed concrete examples of this investment the other day. Japan conducted a ballistic missile test due to the dangers posed by China, North Korea, and Russia. In a statement, Japan's Ministry of Defense explained the development process of the hyper-fast gliding missile, which is planned to be used in the defense of many of the country's islands, and announced that this missile took part in 4 tests in California from August to January. Following this critical announcement, photos and videos of the missile test were shared. Photos released by the Japanese military showed that a land-based launcher was used for the tests. According to Japanese media, the hypersonic gliding missile is equipped with a hypersonic gliding vehicle as a warhead. The warhead can evade air and missile defenses by moving at more than 5 times the speed of sound and maneuvering through the atmosphere. Japan's missile, which is undergoing tests, has all these features. The hypervelocity gliding projectile Block 1, an early mass production version of the missile tested in the United States, has a range of about 310 to 621 miles, Japanese media reported. Media officials also said that a longer-range version of the missile, the Block 2, is under development. The uses of Japan's missile also occupied an important place on the agenda. It is not yet clear whether this missile can be fired from other platforms such as ships. It is estimated that the areas of use of this missile tested by Japan will become much clearer in the future. This new weapon is enthusiastically welcomed by analysts, especially Japanese officials. Masashi Murano, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute's Japan chair, described the new weapon as a short-range ballistic missile equipped with a re-entry vehicle capable of maneuvering at hypersonic speeds towards the target when it re-enters the atmosphere. Japan's defense ministry suggested in a press release that it planned to complete research on the hyper-fast gliding projectile for island defense by fiscal year 2025. However, large-scale production began in 2023. The hypersonic speed gliding projectile will be incorporated into Japan's ground self-defense force in 2026. The weapon is manufactured by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, which is reportedly ramping up production. In March 2020, Japan introduced 2 major hypersonic weapons to the world. These weapons are the Hypersonic Cruise Missile HCM and the HVGP called Hypersonic Velocity Gliding Projectile. The HCM is powered by a scramjet engine that allows for extreme speeds. These weapons are similar to conventional cruise missiles, but have significantly higher speeds and ranges. The HVGP is equipped with a solid fuel rocket engine that propels the warhead while maintaining high speed as it approaches its target. From a strategic point of view, hypersonic weapons are vital for Japan's defense, but their development comes with huge costs. Despite the costs, the ministry said that development to build long-distance defense capabilities will continue. With this move, Japan has actually sent an important message of intimidation to countries like Russia, China, and North Korea. The fact that a ballistic missile will be activated in the event of a defensive attack, and that the mass production of this missile will begin, of course, will normally worry all these countries. According to experts, Russia, China, and North Korea have important interests in the direction of Japan. However, with its latest ballistic missile test, Japan may have dashed the dreams of these 3 countries to some extent. The fact that the missile's range will exceed 600 miles and that even longer-range missiles will exceed this limit points to an incredible development for Japan's own forces. Japan's coastal defense missiles have a limited range of about 125 miles, or 200 kilometers. But with this latest ballistic missile, Japan will more than quadruple that range. While strengthening its self-defense, Japan is also deepening its cooperation with its ally, the United States. The United States Space Force aims to strengthen its new unit in Japan to counter evolving threats from the Indo-Pacific region, where China and Russia are developing space capabilities and North Korea continues to test ballistic missiles. Lieutenant General David Miller, head of the United States Space Operations Command, said that while there are limited personnel today, over the next year or 2 we will grow this component into a full capacity system that we think we need here in Japan as part of a larger network in the Indo-Pacific. The United States Space Force's Field Command in Japan was launched in December at Yokota Air Base in western Tokyo, providing space expertise to support the United States military deployed in the Asian country. It also works in close coordination with its Japanese counterparts to secure space, which is emerging as a new battlefield. David Miller said that space surveillance, missile warning, and tracking are among the key areas of cooperation with Japan. and he foresees the partnership continuing in the future. Miller welcomed the Japan Air Self-Defense Forces plan to strengthen its own team dedicated to space operations. Along with China's economic growth, the strengthening of its military has begun to worry its neighbours. Their tendency to expand their nuclear arsenal, if, as they claim, it is only about the threat from the United States, raises the following questions. Why then have they developed medium and short-range missiles to attack nearby targets like Japan? More channels of communication between the two countries are needed. If, as they say, the growth of their nuclear arsenal does not pose any danger to their neighbours, they have to convince Japan by their behaviour. This is the situation. China is looking for predictability in its behaviour. In the current situation, the perception of the threat from China is growing in Japan. The Japanese government has recently decided to add the United States-made Tomahawk missile to its arsenal as a means of counterattack. It is noteworthy that 10 or 15 years ago, if it had tried to push for this purchase, it would have received a lot of criticism. But now, on the contrary, the government has won a lot of public support. Japan has to prepare for self-defense, because it cannot rely solely on United States intervention. China and the United States could go to war, which could involve nuclear weapons. In that case, if the war spreads to Asia, the United States will not be able to really help Japan. While we do not believe it is reasonable to think that China could use nuclear weapons against Japan in the current context, the growth of its arsenal also suggests that it has multiple war aims in its offensive strategy. Given Japan's cooperation with the United States, in the hypothesis of a large-scale international conflict, it would be possible for China to somehow use its nuclear weapons against Japanese territory. But we do not think this is the most logical or the most likely option. We believe that a nuclear attack on Japan from North Korea would be irrational and therefore unlikely. Nevertheless, the actions of these two states are quite dangerous. They demonstrate their capabilities by launching missiles that pass through Japanese territory, which means that these capabilities are already very advanced. Anticipating these risks, the Tokyo government is working to improve itself in the military field.